Okay, this is Train Fan 1055 giving you another update. But first, a few questions. Have you ever bought a used car and lost it in under an hour? Have you ever had a car literally explode while you were behind the wheel of it while driving on the highway? What could even cause an engine to just explode? These are all questions I ask myself. Just less than 30 minutes after buying this car and trying to drive it home. Okay, so yesterday I bought this used 2005 Kia Sedona. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Kia Sedona, it's shaped kind of like this car, basically, only the rear doors slide open. Anyway, it was a 4-door minivan. My plans had originally been to buy this car, fix it up, and put it on Uber to try to make some extra money to help pay off some debts. But there are a few things I did not know about buying a car. Now, one thing I did not know is that apparently needs engine work could mean anything between the engine light is on or the engine might explode at any moment. Because that's exactly what happened a few minutes after buying the car. So I bought this car. I paid $900 for it. I tested drove it a week earlier and it seemed fine. The only issue was the check engine light was on and it was misfiring when the engine was idling. Now, with my experience helping my father fix his car, when the check engine light comes on and the engine misfires, usually the only issue is it needs spark plug wires and spark plugs, which are not very expensive to purchase. So I'm thinking, sucker, you sold me this car for such a cheap price and I'm gonna get it fixed for only $50. So and I'm driving it to an AutoZone store to pick up the parts for it, and then all of a sudden the engine just won't accelerate. Like, even when I floor it, it just won't accelerate. And then it starts slowing down from 45 to 35 to 25. So I put the 4-way flashes on and started getting really worried. And even when I let go of the accelerator, the RPM gauge just wouldn't change. Like, it was stuck in that one position. I couldn't do anything to lower the RPMs even by letting my foot off the accelerator. Then all of a sudden, I heard a huge explosion and smoke started billowing out of the hood. And then I got really concerned and I pulled over. I was actually trying to pull over earlier, but like this time it became an emergency. I had to do it faster, like as soon as possible. So I'm sitting on the side of the highway. I'm looking out the window, looking out the windshield, watching the smoke just shoot out of the hood. And I'm thinking, did this really just happen? Like, I haven't even had this car for an hour and this happened. Like, is this really happening to me? And then I turn on all the electronics, all of the headlights, taillights, and 4-way flashers. And then I'm like, oh, maybe it's not that bad. All the electronics still works. But then I heard another explosion, and then fire started shooting out of the hood. Imagine if someone had put a flamethrower inside the car and then just fired it out of the hood. That's basically what it looked like. And then I'm like, okay, I better get out of here really quickly. So I get out of the car as soon as I can, making sure to take all my belongings, and I immediately dial 911. And then I'm like, well, maybe it's not so bad. The 4-way flasher still works and everything. But then like 5 minutes later, the 4-way flasher stopped, and I'm like, oh man, now it's an electrical issue. The 4-way flashers don't work anymore. That means the fire did something to either damage the battery or the connections from the battery to the 4-way flashers. That's going to be a very costly repair. Not even worth repairing. Might as well just have the car towed to a junkyard. And then I'm like, okay, and there goes the tires. That's gonna be another $300. Not to mention the over $1,000 it's gonna cost for a new engine and whatever else got burned in the fire. So while I'm waiting for the fire truck to show up, a truck driver pulls up and tries to put out the fire with his fire extinguisher. But unfortunately, the fire extinguisher was dead. Later, another truck driver pulled over and tried to put out the fire, but still his fire extinguisher was dead. And I'm just standing there in horror as the windshield, the front windshield melts off of the car, and I see oil leaking. I see oil on fire leaking out of the bottom of the vehicle, which is weird because it was not leaking oil at the moment that I purchased it. Now, another interesting fact, right after I bought the car and right after everything got printed out and they put the plates on the car, the dealer called the what's the word? The dealer called the mechanic in and he said, make sure this car gets him home safely at the very least. And then I started getting suspicious, but it's too late at that point because I already paid for the car. Like, there's no refund when you buy a used car. Never at all. It's not like a PlayStation where if you buy it and it doesn't work, you can return it and get your money back. That doesn't happen with the car. So I spent $900 on this car, and I'm not going to get that money back. And also, that mechanic failed in his attempt to get me home safely because the car exploded before I even got a third of the way home. I was literally only on the highway for 10 minutes when this happened. At first, I thought it was going to be a simple issue, but it turned out to being really horrible. Anyway, finally the firefighters come in and put out the fire. By the time that happens, the entire front half of the car is just damaged beyond recognition. So I'm like, you know what? I might as well just give up on this car. Might as well just sell it to a junkyard. Maybe I can get some of my money back. The next day, which is today, I called the dealership and said, hey, my car exploded on the way home. Like, what are you gonna do about it? He says, well, I'm sorry, but there's no refunds. And I'm like, do you realize that you nearly killed me? Like. I'm pretty sure that you knew that the car was gonna do this, and you just sold it to me. He just told, like, I'm speechless at what happened here. And he told me he did not know that the car was gonna explode, which I doubt because, like, it's your vehicle, it's in your inventory. How do you not know that something that's in your inventory is gonna do something? Like, you should know what's wrong with the vehicles you own before you sell them to people. Anyway. Here are the 2 keys that came with the car, or rather, what's left of the car. I wish I could show you pictures of what happened to the car, but basically, the entire front half of the vehicle is burnt beyond recognition. There's no paint on it anymore. It's just gray and black and brown all over the front of the vehicle. There's no windshield anymore because the firefighters have to break it off to get to the fire and put it out. The hood won't open or close anymore. The entire front area is just on the ground, including the engine and everything that was attached to the engine. All the belts attached to the engine are shredded and burnt. The front 2 tires are gone. On one of them, all that's left is the metal that's attached to them. The 2 front doors still open and close, but the entire interior of the car is just shredded and torched, basically. The dashboard doesn't work either. The entire dashboard just melted. And the windshield wipers on the front of the vehicle melted into the body. There's blackness all over the interior of the vehicle now. Oddly enough, my papers that prove that I own the car, such as the registration and everything, did not get burnt in the fire. And the manual to the car, which was in the glove compartment, was also untouched. I wish I could say the same about the rest of the car, though. The entire rear half of the vehicle is still intact, but, like, without any electricity running to it from the front, which got burnt off. It's basically useless. So now I'm trying to figure out if the insurance is going to cover this and get the car repaired, or are they going to give me money towards getting a new one, or... Because, like, if they can't cover the car, then there's nothing I can do with it besides sell it to the junkyard it got towed to after the fire. Am I gonna try to get another car? No, not at all. I'm just gonna skip to the next step, which was to buy a new laptop. Cause, like, I'm just not gonna deal with this. So that's basically what happened so far, and basically where I am as far as my plan to get a car and a laptop. I got a car, but then that that just burnt to the ground. So now I'm gonna try to get a laptop and then try to figure out what to do with the remains of this car and the keys that came with it, because now these are basically useless. Like, part of me was tempted to actually try to put the key in the ignition to see if the car would start, but like, even if it did, it probably would catch on fire again, so I didn't want to risk it. So that's basically what happened so far. Oh, by the way, I still haven't found out what can cause an engine to actually literally explode, and I'm talking about fireworks kind of explosion. Like pretty much similar to the explosions you see in the movies, which I thought were myths until just now. Like, the explosion was so large, it rocked the entire vehicle. The entire front half of the vehicle jumped a little bit when the engine exploded. So yeah, if anyone actually knows what can cause an engine to literally explode and start gushing fire like a flamethrower, yeah, feel free to leave that in the comments.